Hello, good evening or good morning. I am going to want to welcome you to the Fordham Institute of Women and Girls annual conference. Our theme this year is advocating for the rights of all women, the power of technology and art. This is from the Fordham Institute for Women and Girls. It was created over 20 years ago to educate and advocate for women. Our members include faculty, students, those from within Fordham University, and also others, local, national, and international community people who are concerned about women's rights. In thinking about what I was going to say today, I thought, in a way, this is the best of times. Every day I'm encouraged by hearing about another woman who has a high level administrative or political position. But also, I'm discouraged when I think this is the worst of times. Violence against women have increased everywhere, and Indigenous women have been particularly victims here. There are serious threats to reproductive freedom, which we suffer from a lot, and in my country. Migrant women are really under siege. Maternal mortality is high, but most of all, many women around the world have had their freedom and their pursuit of education really thwarted, in recent years, or especially this year. But then I thought, I know there's so many problems, but let's focus on some, not just on the negatives, but what are we doing positively? How are we using technology and art to address these threats? And this is what we're going to hear in this conference. I want to just tell you about planning for this conference. First, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Dr. Elaine Congress. I'm the co-chair of the Institute for Women and Girls. I'm also Associate Dean and Professor at Fordham University, Graduate School of Social Service in New York City. I'm the other co-chair of our institute is Dr. Sandra Turner. She's also in the Fordham faculty. Sandra, I don't know if you could hold up your hand or turn on your video for us to see you, and you'll hear from Dr. Turner later in our program. Other people who serve on the planning committee are Dr. Pat Brownell. Dr. Brownell is a faculty emerita at Fordham. She's a past chair of our institute, and she also was very involved with our newsletter. Other members we have is, I don't know if Christian is joining us today, Christian Triglia, and she works in Fordham Tech. We have a GSS alum, Doreen Dorsley, and we have three wonderful students who have worked with us. Erica Udall. Erica, let's see you for a minute. You're going to hear from Erica shortly, and she's really kind of chaired this initiative. Other students who've helped us are Chelsea Bonowski, and you'll hear from Chelsea later, and Michael Buckhout, and he also has helped us a great deal on our newsletter. Also, before I begin, I want to give special thanks to our Fordham team who's really made this possible. First, for Trish Rodriguez, and Trish has really helped us in planning this event, and it wouldn't have been possible without Trish. We also have Connor, and Connor White has helped us by promoting and getting many people to come to our event today. And last but certainly not least, we have Matt Roach, and we have Matt to thank for all of our technology for really making this possible. So for us to connect from around the world, from New York City to Sydney, Australia. So thank you, Matt, for all of your work in doing this. So anyway, that's a little bit about what we're, what we're doing now. And I think we have the program. I don't know if you want to put it, Erica, do you want to put it in the chat, or it is in the chat, right? Or I'm sorry, not the question and answers, or I don't know how we can make it more visible. But I want to begin the program by introducing Dr. Susan. Okay, let's wait a minute so we can kind of see our program. Okay, great. I think you have it there, right? Okay, thanks. Let me be, okay, so now let me introduce Dr. Susan O'Malley. Susan O'Malley is just terrific. She, as you know, why do we choose March 10th, right? And why did I talk to Trish way back last fall? And I said, I know we're going to have the conference on March 10th. Why March 10th? March 10th is between the 2 weeks of the Commission of Status of Women conference at the United Nations. So it's very fitting that we have our Institute event conference in the middle of this 2-week international conference. So that's why we have it now. And we are very pleased that we were able to have the immediate past chair of the Committee on the Status of Women come and give some introductory remarks. And we're really very pleased about our connection, with the Commission and the Committee on the Status of Women. So let me turn the program over to Dr. O'Malley.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say I've always admired Elaine's work and her students that have often come over to the UN and spoken at various events, and they've always been wonderful. So I don't know how much you want to know about CSW. I'll only spend about 5 minutes trying to educate you about it. Okay, so welcome to the Commission on the Status of Women, 67. Okay, there are 5 commissions in the UN, and believe it or not, the Women's Commission is the largest, very much so. It's the largest meeting at the UN, except for the General Assembly, when all of the heads of state come into New York City. When I was chair, UN Women said, couldn't you make this smaller? Don't have so many events. Well, that was impossible. This year we have 750 events that you can attend. It's all free. It's also both virtual and in person. it's 200 in person and 550 virtual. Okay, if you want to know more, you can go to our website. I don't know if they know about our platform, WHOA. You go to CSW, NGO CSW, New York, then you click on CSW 67, and then you get into the platform, and you can see our 750 events. Besides parallel events, we have conversation circles, we have briefings, all kinds of things. So if you want to venture on that, do that. I just want to say just a little bit about the UN and how I like to think about it after all of these years. We have the member states, 197, and they make the decisions. And we have to remember that. Yes. Okay, we have the UN entities like UN Women, UNICEF, UNESCO, and then we have the NGOs, and that's what we're part of. Now, if you can believe it, as of December 22nd, the end of this year of 22, we had 6,343 ECOSOC accredited NGOs. Yes, and I like to think about the UN as us, that we're all working together and that we are all necessary. The countries, yes, okay. that make the decisions and the General Assembly and all of that, the entities, but NGOs are absolutely essential to the working of the UN and getting things done. I think we bring a lot of research. I think we bring a lot of courage. I think we, sometimes I think we're a little bit, well, we're more independent and a little bit maybe more moral. I mean, well, and so what I learned when I was head of, I'd have a great idea. I'd go to UN Women. That's a great idea, but we can't do it. You can, we can't. We have to think of our budget. We're not independent like you. So we have to think of us all working together and respecting one another and moving the agenda. Now, the only other thing I'll talk about is the outcome document. You might want to know what that is. Every year, all of the countries negotiate an outcome document. And this year, it is on the theme of technology. You probably know that. Let's see, it's called Innovation and Technological Changes and Education in the Digital Age for Achieving Gender Equality and Empowerment for All Women. So that's what we're negotiating. Now, the member states negotiate, but we do whatever we can to give that information our ideas and input. And we struggle with that a lot, but we've made some progress in that. And then there is also a review theme on the empowerment of rural women. So I think I'll stop there because I'm looking forward to your event and I hope to attend all of it. It just sounds fascinating. And thank you.
Thank you so
Great
much,
job.
Dr. O'Malley. That was great. My name is Erica Udau. I'm a Master's of Social Work candidate at Fordham University and student representative at the United Nations. It is my pleasure today to introduce our keynote speaker, Mandy Ansari. Mandy is a co-founder of the Iranian Diaspora Collective and also a marketing executive, mental health advocate, influencer, and Iranian immigrant who is passionate about suicide prevention and helping people feel less alone. Mandy's mother was imprisoned at Evin prison during the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Her mother was able to seek asylum in France and with the help of anonymous refugee assistance groups, was able to immigrate to San Francisco, California. We are glad to have Mandy with us today to tell us more about the current situation in Iran and teach us about how technology and social media are being used to empower women during this revolution. Over to you, Mandy.
Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be here. I love Fordham. My mother-in-law went to Fordham and so did my cousin, who's like a little brother to me. So I've actually spoken at the Gabelli School of Business at Fordham before and just always love coming back here. And I love what you guys are doing here today. So thank you so much for having me. As was just brought up, I am one of the founding members of Iranian Diaspora Collective, which is a nonprofit that has been birthed during the last 175 days to support the first woman-led revolution happening in history in Iran right now. So we're going to jump into it and kind of talk about how that affects women everywhere and how we can use the power of technology to really advocate for women, for women's rights, but also for human rights in general. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, this should work. Okay. So this is me. As was mentioned, I am an immigrant. We actually were able to seek asylum because of a refugee organization that Meryl Streep was really involved in. So talk about advocating for women. Meryl Streep was really passionate in the 80s about immigration, about refugees, about political prisoners, and about sponsoring people to be able to come and live freely, specifically women. This is Iran. This is where my family immigrated from. And it's interesting because you see these photos. It's beautiful. It's colorful. It's gorgeous. It's somewhere you want to travel to. It looks like a lot of the photos I see from travel bloggers on Instagram these days. But this is what Iran looks like in most people's minds, I think. When you talk about Middle East, when you talk about the women of the Middle East, this is maybe what it looks like to many at first thought. This is actually what Iran looked like before 1979. 1979 was when a revolution took over and the Islamic Republic took over. At that time, it was a monarchy in Iran. And actually, Iran was the backdrop of a lot of fashion magazines. There was a lot of photo shoots by Vogue. Elizabeth Taylor loved going to Iran. Caviar is amazing in Iran. Wine is amazing in Iran. And it was a very fashion forward country that was really on track to being one of the most powerful and really trend-setting landscapes right behind England and America. And it was just a very different place. And seemingly overnight, things changed. And what happened was, and these are things that are still illegal to this day that women are fighting for, that women can't do. And when that revolution took over, immediately women became second-class citizens. I mean, truly, it's something that they say. And attending protests, like going to the Women's March, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have done, going to an abortion march, anything, any kind of protest is illegal. Freedom of religion, wearing makeup and nail polish at school. This is today in 2023. These things are not possible in Iran by a woman. Traveling without your husband, and if you're not married, without your father's consent. You can't sing in public. You can't ride a bicycle. You can't dance in public. You can't wear red lipstick in public. You cannot file for a divorce, while a man can file for a divorce without you present. And actually, they can have multiple wives as well, but you're not allowed to. Holding hands in public, whether that's if it looks romantic, no matter who it's with, it's illegal. Attending a sporting event, and soccer is extremely popular in Iran. It is they live for the World Cup. So attending a sporting event is actually highly illegal. And then their gender presentation, you have no freedom of expression, essentially. This is actually, I love these photos. Sorry, I live in Greenwich Village. It's very loud here. These photos are actually International Women's Day in 1979. So 44 years ago, and this is everything I just told you that happened on February 11th of 1979 when those rules were imposed on women. So not even a month later, on March 8th of 1979, women took to the streets without the mandatory hijab, the mandatory head covering that they need to wear, and they were protesting for their rights, which were just taken away from them less than 30 days before. And I love seeing these images because it looks a lot like the protests that we have seen, especially the last couple of years here in New York and across the states. And you see these women, and they are, less than 30 days ago, all of their rights were stripped away, and they're taking to the streets and they're protesting boldly without their headscarves. And actually, it was during these same protests that my mom was taken to Evin Prison. Evin Prison is one of the most notorious prisons. It's one of the biggest violations of human rights in the world. For those who are very familiar with the Commission on Status of Women, you're very familiar with Evin Prison as well. It is a very cruel place. My mom was only 19 years old, and that is actually the average age. There is right now 19,000 protesters that are in prison right now in Iran, and the average age is 19. So this uprising right now is very personal to me because my mom was in that prison. It's something that's very hard for her to talk about. She barely talks about it, but she has promised that she will give me rights to an exclusive memoir one day. And this is just her growing up, and then me and her on the right in Oakland, California, just about a year after we were able to seek asylum and come to America. So fast forward to September 16th, 2022, when a young woman named Mahsa Amini was killed and murdered for not wearing a compulsory hijab. a group called the Morality Police, which are there in Iran to make sure mostly that women are adhering to the rules and the laws, are adhering to them. And she was traveling, she's a Kurdish woman, and she was traveling to visit her family in Tehran. She had no plans to become a symbol of a revolution. She had no plans to start a revolution. She was just a 23-year-old girl wanting to go visit her family. And her hair was showing, probably a little bit like you see in this photo. She was loosely wearing her hijab, and she was arrested. And then 3 days later, she was declared dead after being severely bruised, beaten, and visibly tortured. Something I really want to bring up here is that over 60% of Iran's 80 million person population is under the age of 30. They are bold people. They're very bold. It's Gen Z is leading the pack here. And the average age, like I said, is just 19 years old for the people that are really going to these protests and who are getting arrested. Mahsa is a beautiful young girl, just like, you know, many of the girls that are walking the campus at Fordham right now. And she was killed, and then innocent protesters, including teens, were being tortured and murdered. Activists and journalists have been detained. Many activists and journalists. It's very hard to get news out of them. And Iranians and the diaspora are people like me who have been displaced from their home since the 1979 revolution, were protesting by the thousands, but the media was silent. And it's really easy. And the reason why I shared that picture that most of us think about when we think of the, you know, women in the Middle East, and largely we ignore them because we think, oh, this is just a problem in the Middle East. It can't happen here. But Margaret Atwood actually wrote Handmaid's Tale based on the revolution in 1979 in Iran. And a lot of the things that we see in Handmaid's Tale right now on the show, we're like, there's no way that could happen. This is absolutely insane. How could that happen overnight? She wrote that, she wrote that all based on the Islamic Republic and those same tactics that are used in Handmaid's Tale, like shooting people in the eye in close proximity, women specifically, is happening right now in Iran. Women, this has become a really popular picture, the photo that you're seeing on the right, of women missing an eye because they've been shot in the eye from very close range. And when we talk about women being a war on women everywhere, it truly is everywhere. I mean, who here knows about the Free Britney movement? I'm hoping a lot of you, because you're my people. But when we talk about conservatorships, this is happening here. And every single day, the rights of women are being chipped away in the States right here. And I always come back to this poem, and Martin Niemöller, who said this at first. He's a little bit of a controversial figure, but when you look at these words, it's so interesting because, and this is something that a lot of people were saying in Iran when this first happened, and especially people like me in the diaspora. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And this really speaks to me because as women, a lot of times we are focused on helping everybody else, and we don't really notice until it's too late that our rights have been chipped away and stolen from us right underneath our eyes while we've been paying attention to everybody else. I want to play this video for you, and I hope the sound works well, but this is a girl, Sarina Esmailizadeh, who is only 15 when she was killed, and she was a blogger. So I relate as a blogger and a content creator. And I just want to give you a peek into the types of people who are being killed and jailed and who are protesting in the streets for women's rights and who are using the internet to actually get their message out there.
همین الان امتحان تموم شد و اصلا یه حس رهایی، یه حس آزادی، چی بهتر از این؟ و بعد یه اپیزودی میگی داغونه، فرهنگیمون داغونه دیگه، یه سری محدودیت‌هایی که مخصوصا واسه زن‌ها خیلی بیشتر مثل حجاب اجباری. خیلی خیلی ممنونی از اینکه واسه پسرم خودم لیست کنم که ولا رفتی.
Can you all see me again? Okay. So that video gets me every time because these are just young girls, and the way that they're speaking about women's rights and the way that they're speaking about human rights. It's teenagers have so much other stuff to be worrying about, teenage girls especially. And, you know, they're worried about covering their hair. They're worried about, you know, making sure that they're not wearing nail polish at school because they don't want to be killed for those basic expressions. So what's different about what's happening right now in Iran? We're 175 days into a revolution that is being led by women. Sorry, guys. That is being led by women. And something is different. And what we've realized is different about this is that the revolution is being live streamed. The internet has been highly censored in Iran by the government. They don't want people to be broadcasting what is happening inside Iran. They don't want people to know about where people are being jailed. The prisons are actually full. And so they have taken over big buildings and they are raping women there. They are beating women there, and they are just putting everyone that they can away and taking their phones, taking away their social media accounts. And what's different about this is every single piece of content that we're seeing come out of Iran, out of this revolution, is because somebody has been brave enough to share it online. And we're really seeing this boldness in this next generation that is just fearless and really wants to let people know, you know, what they're being attacked for. And this is a boldness and a bravery that I feel like I have not seen to this magnitude in a really long time. And what we started seeing from, you know, these pieces of media that they were sharing with us is we saw a protest song come out by a man named Shervin, who actually was recognized at the Grammys for the song for social change this last year. We started seeing protest art. We started seeing graffiti and just this expression using art to let us know how women are being suppressed. And then we started seeing people here in the States, a lot of these pictures are from San Francisco and New York, starting to be like, this is not okay. Women cannot be treated like this. And one of my favorite signs that I've seen is you effed with the wrong generation, because this generation is like, oh, you want to do this to us? We will let you know. We will let the world know, and we will get allies to come and to start, you know, raising their voice and being our voice. And Mahsa Amini, this hashtag broke the record for most used hashtags in history. On September 23rd, this hashtag was used over 23 million times, and now it's been used over 90 million times. There's also the version of it in Persian. So cumulatively together, this has been the most used hashtag in history, which just goes to tell you for the power behind the internet and what the digital age can really do for activism. This is something I wrote that I really believe in. If you were to ask me what my mission in life is and what my belief in life is in my career, it's that when digital technology is leveraged correctly, I believe it has the power to make people's lives better. We hear so much about how social media can be toxic and how the use of screen time and the internet can truly be a detriment to us. But I really believe that when we use it, we can increase productivity, we can amplify conversations, And we can really make the world a smaller place to create meaningful communities, both online and offline. I believe that a more open and connected world is a better world. And I believe that it brings stronger relationships with those you love, a stronger economy with more opportunities, and a stronger society that can work together to do good. Iranian Diaspora Collective, the nonprofit that we formed, was born out of a bunch of Iranians in media, in entertainment, in law, in finance, that came together and were like, what can we do? Our motherland is on fire. Our brothers and sisters are being thrown into prison, are being killed. What can we do to help? And what was really hard is about a week into Mahsa Amini's death, we and people being, imprisoned, the media wasn't really talking about it. The global media wasn't really talking about it. And I do believe that it was a lot about Jessica Chastain actually was interviewed recently, and she said, why aren't people talking about Iran? And I wonder if it's because of geographically where they are, on the map. And I do believe that a lot of times we've looked at the women in the Middle East like it's a helpless cause, and it's always been that way. But when I think about it, 44 years is not a very long time to have everything change for you as a woman. We launched our first campaign to really take over, that void that was in the media. We put up billboards all throughout Times Square. We actually put up 167 activations across New York, LA, and Washington, DC. And these billboards became basically almost a place that people were able to gather to mourn. It was a backdrop of rallies and protests. It was a backdrop of, just candlelight visuals, people getting together to form community. And it wasn't just Iranians that were gathering here. It was our allies. We put together a rally in Times Square, myself and one of the co-founders as well. And, we're both content creators and bloggers and activists. And we put together this rally in Times Square, and we had over 1,000 people show up. And it wasn't just Iranians. It was also our allies. It was people from the UN. It was college campuses across New York that wanted to come and wanted to stand up for women's rights. And I really believe that when we see that when we can look and see that there isn't really a divide between what is happening to women in Afghanistan, in Iran, in other parts of the world, and what is happening to women here in the US, because there truly is that war on our rights is happening every single day. When we see that we're so much more alike than we are different, and that all oppression is linked, I do believe that we can make a powerful impact together. And that's just a little bit more. And what we started seeing after this is we started seeing people being creative and finding ways to stand up and to advocate for women, whether it was on the red carpet, whether it was during New York or Paris Fashion Week, whether it was at, an award ceremony. We started seeing women of all walks of life and all backgrounds stand up and say, this is not okay. We have to stand up for women. We have to advocate for this because we are all linked. We are all the same. And one thing I think that is very interesting about the fact that, the government in Iran treats women like second-class citizens. These are stats from today. Iranian women have a 97% literacy rate. They make up 65% of university graduates. There's 70% of STEM graduates, which is actually a percentage that is higher than any other country in the world. This is a very highly educated group of women who have fought for every single right that they have. Resistance and resilience has unfortunately had to become a part of who they are. It's embedded in them. And when I think of my mom, a 19-year-old who was in Evin prison for simply attending a protest, she wasn't doing anything other than holding a sign up at a protest, and she was put in prison where she was tortured. Resistance and resilience are things as women that we have had to tap into because we are under attack in so many ways. Even if it's, we were talking before this started with one of the organizers, they had their baby in the background, and they're juggling all these things. They're taking care of their baby. We're pumping during work and trying to, just make ends meet as a woman, and we're constantly, there's a war waging on our abilities and our rights and the way that we express ourselves. And resilience is something that is embedded in women, but does it have to be? Is that something that we have to always be fighting for our rights, and how do we change that? And you know, Iranian women, they were at the forefront of the protests, not just in 1979, but in 2007 and 2009 and 2019, and now again in 2022 and 2023. So taking to the streets to advocate for the basic fundamental human rights is something that they've been doing long before the death of Mahsa Amini, but it's something that I think we can all as women partake in now because we have a smartphone and an internet connection. Truly, we can all show up as one and advocate for one another. And something that I love is a couple weeks into this revolution, over 50 French actresses got together and they started cutting their hair on TikTok, online, across social media, at UN meetings. One of the Swedish ambassadors, she got up. It was a totally unrelated speech, and she cut her hair right there at the mic. And so we started seeing, you know, women across the world really stand up and, as an act of solidarity, cut their hair, because hair has become this, you know, it was why a 23-year-old girl was killed. It's why, you know, it's just become this sign of oppression in the Middle East. And so they started going on and cutting their hair and just really demanding for the right for women to choose whether or not they want to cover their hair, what religion they want to practice, you know, what they want to do and how they want to express themselves. And this was something that took off on the internet, and you started going, you still go to protests. I went to one last week and women were cutting their hair at a protest, still taking on, you know, something that happened on social media by women who weren't even Iranian. Then we started seeing celebrities, actors, public figures, actors, all backgrounds coming together to demand the stopping executions in Iran. There has been 4, and this is something I find really interesting about the revolution that's happening in Iran, is that this is the first time I'm seeing men literally lay down their lives and risk their lives to protect women. And I think that's really interesting, because I do believe that until we all unify and advocate for one another, regardless of, you know, our backgrounds, the religion that we choose, what color our skin is, you know, in every uprising, you can see this, is that we need allyship. Without allyship, we can't be successful in whatever it is we're trying to do, because or else we're just in an echo chamber. If women are the only ones advocating for women's rights in America or abroad, and we don't have the support of our allies, the movement can only go so far. And it's been really amazing seeing, you know, the stop executions in Iran was actually also across the Eiffel Tower one night. They had that message up there, and it's just seeing the world come together and then having this content created actually and spread online so that the world can see that people are coming together and rallying around one common cause. And we've also seen, you know, on social media, we're seeing so many people get creative about educating others on what's happening there and standing up for others. And I do want to say, you know, these aren't just statistics. This isn't an isolated incident. This is something that real people with hopes and dreams are fighting for. You saw Serena Esmailizadeh, the 16-year-old YouTuber, talk about this, but it's 175 days of sustained protests so far. 161 cities across Iran are involved. 19,000 innocent protesters detained so far, and many are at risk of execution. 527, this number is a lot higher now. Innocent protesters have been killed by Islamic Republic forces, and actually over 70 of those are children. There was a 2-year-old that was murdered last week just because he was in a car with his parents, and not because they were attacking him specifically. He wasn't even protesting, but because they're opening fire on anyone that seems to be going to a protest or to express themselves in any way. So something I love, and obviously I love the internet and I'm obsessed with technology, but something I love is this hashtag was birthed in the beginning of this revolution, and it was Be Their Voice. And this was heavily because the internet is being used to suppress the people of Iran from getting the word out of what is happening. And I really believe that the reason why they try to suppress the internet is not only to keep it isolated there, but because they know that this generation of people who are using technology are so much more connected and so much more powerful when they band together. And so being their voice isn't just being their voice because they don't have internet connection to be able to share this with us. And it's, it's being their voice, because we are all one voice. Because when we come together in one voice, we are so much more louder and more effective. And I truly believe that every dictatorship around the world, every oppressive school of thought, it could even be, right now there's so much happening right now with drag queens being, being suppressed and silenced in Tennessee, just a couple states over. And, being one another's voice is the only way we can truly not only bring awareness, but put a stop to things and actually shine a light on what's happening around the world. So a couple of things, people are always like, well, where can I start? How can I talk about what's happening there? How can I be a voice? I don't know enough. We've actually put together, if you go to media.iraniandiasporacollective.com, there is a document that is updated every single day with news. And it really is like a one-on-one 101 document on how to talk about what's happening in Iran. And I think this can be an example. It's actually been accessed over 85,000 times by journalists and by people who just want to help and who want to be their voice. But I think it's so important for us, if there is a cause that you are passionate about, if you want to stand up for women or any sort of oppressed minority group or anybody who needs you to be their voice, I think it's really important for us to not be afraid of making a mistake, to not be afraid of sounding like we don't know all the facts, but to really ask one another questions and be bold enough to be educated on what maybe we don't know enough about. And that's why I love talking at things like this, because I think it's so important for us to lean on one another and on our skill sets and just ask how we can be stronger together. And so these are just a couple of the things that, we can talk about online and that you can weave into what you're already talking about, whether that's, whether you're giving a lecture, whether you're attending a class, whether, you can easily weave this into whatever you're talking about with friends, just talking about how people are being suppressed around the world. I am so moved by and just heartbroken by the fact that girls in Afghanistan aren't able to continue their education, to pursue their education. And I really believe it's because there is truly nothing more intimidating, more powerful, and more dangerous to a dictator, to anyone who wants to oppress you, than a woman who is educated, who is well-read, and who is free to express themselves. And I think it's important for women everywhere to understand that this war on women isn't just something for the women in Afghanistan. It is something that we should all be aware of, because when we're not standing up for them and when this is happening anywhere, that is a threat to our rights everywhere. And just last week, this has been happening since November, but last week on Saturday was the highest cases of this. They are now poisoning schoolgirls in Iran. They are, there's chemical warfare and toxic poisoning, toxic gas being unleashed in schools in Iran right now on schoolgirls. I mean, these are young girls, elementary school, high school, young girls. And they're using this tactic because they want to scare women and just stifle their ability to go to school and pursue an education, because women are the ones who are leading this revolution. And they know that if women are scared and if women are staying at home and women aren't learning, that the dictatorship can keep going a lot longer without women at the forefront of this, and the same goes for the patriarchy everywhere. If women are silenced and scared and not pursuing an education and not wanting to be aware of what's happening around the world, a lot of these oppressive regimes and schools of thought can continue to live on. So it's extremely important that we band together and we find ways to support women, whether that's here in the States, whether that's in Tennessee, whether that's in Texas, Afghanistan, or Iran. I just believe that women are so much more powerful when we come together. And I'd love to open it up to questions and kind of go from there. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mandy, so much. You really said it so aptly. This is a war on women. It's deeply heart-wrenching and scary, honestly. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today. So I'd like to invite everyone to please feel free to add your questions to our chat, to the Q&A chat. And as they come in, I'm just going to get us started. Mandy, our first question is, the stories of what's happening to women in Iran are heart-wrenching. What gives you hope?
Yeah, what gives me hope is truly the power. Well, first of all, like on International Women's Day, there was, if you go on Iranian Diaspora Collective's Instagram page, you'll see this video up, but it's 6 girls and they live in this community that is full of high rises. And a lot of the people that live there in this certain part of Tehran are actually in prison right now. They're jailed protesters. It's a very young, thriving metropolis. If you would imagine basically Greenwich Village, you know, it's where there's a lot of young students that are living there, and a lot of them right now are in prison. And these girls on International Women's Day got on, you know, started doing a TikTok dance, essentially a trending TikTok song. And they got up and they started dancing. They weren't wearing a hijab. They were wearing crop tops and joggers. And truly this video actually went very viral. I keep seeing it everywhere and posted by everyone, because you see these girls and you see yourself in them. They're no different than any other girl that's on TikTok, any group of friends at any college campus in the States getting up there and dancing. And actually I just read literally minutes before we came on here that the regime's looking for these girls and they want to arrest them, which is, I know, and you know, your first thought, and this is what gives me hope, is your first thought when you see something like that is, oh my gosh, I wish people weren't posting them. Why aren't people blurring their faces? And I get a lot of this actually when I post videos from Iran on my own social media accounts. Why aren't people blurring their faces? Why aren't they covering them up? Why don't you guys tell them to stop telling these girls to put social media videos up? The thing is, these women, these girls, they have nothing to lose. And it was an Instagram caption of actually a guy who was killed by the regime. His last Instagram post said, please take my life, because if this is my last Instagram post, please take my life, because the way the women are living right now, they're actually not living. And I think that's so powerful, because it's so easy for us to sit in a glass house and be like, oh no, I don't want to get arrested. I want to be safe. I want to stay, you know, I want to keep my family safe. But when you think about these women, the fact that they have nothing to lose and they're taking to the streets and they're like, kill me. They're willing to die for their freedom. And to be able to have women that are that passionate about advocating for their own rights and the rights of others gives me hope, because I believe that there is no way a dictatorship can survive with a large population being women who are 94% literate and who are 70% of them are in STEM. There is no way that you can let these women lose. They will win.
That's great. We have another question coming in. Are you seeing support from those who lived through the 1979 Iranian Revolution?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say this. So it breaks my heart actually, because my mom, my aunts, every single one of them have had a very, you know, the story that I shared of my mom being in Evin prison, that's not really uncommon, unfortunately. You know, a lot of people my age, we are here because somebody fought for freedom. Somebody wanted to leave an oppressive regime and wanted to give their children and the next generation, you know, freedom. And it's sad to think about that, because they left, you know, a place where they knew the language, where a lot of people, like I have a lot of doctors in my family, and they were practicing. They came here, they went to Europe or Canada, and they had to go to medical school all the way over again. I mean, I would never do that, to be honest. So I really just like that commitment to freedom and to bettering their life is really a common thread in a lot of Iranians in the diaspora. But, you know, I have seen my mom and my aunts, it breaks my heart. And we always laugh. We're like, they post, you know, things on social media, pictures of themselves at protests, and they're holding these signs, and they literally have 4 likes, but they will go live at every protest, at every rally. And this has been happening since September. You know, every single week they're going to 3 or 4 rallies, and they're just trying to do whatever they can. But I will say, what I think is really interesting is they're leaning on us who are more tech savvy to get the word out. So while they are supporting and going to everything that they can do, I can't tell you how many hours I have spent on Zoom or on FaceTime trying to get them to be able to put something on Twitter, to help them open their Instagram accounts. I probably helped like 15 people in their 70s open social media accounts and Twitter accounts because they just want to have a voice, and they also want to see what the youth of Iran are sharing. And so I will say that it's so important for those of us who have a handle on any sort of technology to really support others in being their voice.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I think that's really on the nose, that you have this amazing knowledge of how to access this powerful tool.
And actually the other day, something that really touched me is Richard Branson. He has, I believe, 85 million followers on just Twitter alone, or maybe more cumulatively, but he actually gave his social media accounts. He dedicated all of International Women's Day to amplifying the voices of Iranian women. And he amplified the voices of Nazanin Noor, Mojan Marno, an Iranian American actress, and also Gisu Nia, who is an attorney at the Atlantic Council, and just retweeted everything they had to say. And I think that's just a perfect example. Of course, now all of us aren't Richard Branson with 85 million followers, but there are ways that we can get creative in how to amplify the messages and the voices and to be the voice of women. And this really inspires me because while I'm Iranian, and this is personal to me, and it is really cool and just so inspiring that this is the first, woman-led revolution of our time. But the thing is there's a war on women everywhere. So how are we advocating for reproductive rights? How are we advocating for LGBTQIA rights? And I think that there's something to learn from this for everyone, no matter where you're from, and not just for the revolution in Iran, but for what's happening in your backyard. For maybe it might be just for what's happening at the elementary school that your kid goes to. It's just how we can get creative in being activists.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mandy, for speaking with us today. Everyone, we will have another Q&A opportunity at the very end of this event. So for now, we're going to introduce our next speaker. But again, Mandy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica, for having me.
And we will continue.
Hello. Hi, my name is Sandra Turner, and I just want to add my thanks to you, Mandy. Your talk was heart-wrenching, but I have to say it was also inspirational because it gave me hope that perhaps these protests, will lead to a revolution, and that the women of Iran will be victorious, and the dictators might actually be brought down. I also thought your point about how it's so important for us to get involved in Iran, because what's happening there, how that became a dictatorship, can happen here in our country. And I think, we often think that this can never happen, but I think you have to be I'm so pleased to introduce Gabrielle. She's a professor and a doctor. She's the president of the International Health Awareness Network, IHAN, who we're sponsoring this conference with jointly. She's also the president of, she's the head of the obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Notre Dame in Sydney, Australia. She's the past chairman of the NSW State Committee of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. She's past president of the Medical Women's International Association, and she has undertaken projects with World Health Organization and the United Nations. She cares for her patients with compassion and understanding, and she teaches her students with compassion and understanding, while all the time lobbying to improve women's health in Australia and overseas. She and her students have collaborated with the Fordham Institute for Women and Girls for many years, as we put on 2 conferences each year on vital women's health issues and political issues. Her creativity, professionalism, and warmth make her a much valued partner in all our endeavors. She trains the most talented and committed students in addition to ours, as you will see in a few minutes. So I welcome Gabrielle Casper.
Thank you, Sandy, for your very kind words. And I can't start without saying, Mandy, thank you very much for your presentation. The issues you're talking about are absolutely horrific. And I agree with Sandy when he said the nice thing was that you believe that things are going to improve and that they can improve. And the importance that you place on advocacy. And I'm going to introduce you to two of my co-professors, but we are very keenly trying to get advocacy on the core curriculum for medical students, as we believe doctors also must take up advocacy. For many years, International Health Awareness Network has shared events with the Fordham Institute for Women and Girls due to the wonderful friendship between Sandy Turner, Elaine Congress, and my wonderful mentor, Sarosh Rashan. For 38 years, IHAN has actively advocated, educated, and assisted women across the globe. It is great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Sarosh, who is the past president and founder of HARAN. Sarosh is there. Her video is not working. I'm not sure whether she can unmute and say hello. No, it looks like she's unable to, but Sarosh is with us today. Women and girls are facing many health challenges across the globe, exacerbated by climate, war, and COVID-19. These events are reversing decades of progress in women and girls' health, especially for the world's poorest and most vulnerable women. Many governments and UN agencies discuss the health issues for women and girls, but they often neglect the extremely important issue of rural women's health. The CSW 2013 priority theme is innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. And the review theme is challenges and opportunities in achieving gender equality and the empowerment of rural women and girls. So we have decided to combine these two themes, and our presentation will be on rural women's health, challenges and innovation in a technological world. I've decided to I've enlisted the assistance of Professor Lynn Madden and Megan Brennan, who have guided our wonderful students. Lynn, Megan, could you come on video just for a minute and just say hello? Just unmute for a second.
Good morning, Gabrielle, and good morning, colleagues and students. It's a fantastic opportunity to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation.
And Megan? Megan suddenly disappeared. She may have lost internet. I would like to introduce you to Stephanie, Catherine, Priyanka, Shen, Tessa, Constance, Imogen, Rihanna, and Ella. They're our stars for the morning from the Uni of New South, from the Uni of Notre Dame. We look forward to hearing your presentations. Can you quickly show us your faces and unmute so we can see your faces? Where are you? Unmute, say hello and give us a wave.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you all.
Morning.
We're very keen to hear your presentations now.
Hi, my name is Stephanie and this is Catherine. We are medical students from the University of Notre Dame, Sydney, Australia, and we are honoured to be presenting on the global burden of disease for women at the International Health Awareness Network 2023. The global burden of disease among women has evolved significantly. Previously, the main concerns stemmed from issues surrounding sexual and reproductive health. However, at present, non-communicable diseases are now the leading cause of death and disability for women in almost all countries of the world, yet remain overrepresented in certain countries, with 80% occurring in low-income and middle-income countries. Despite the alarming rate of non-communicable diseases, it is not being addressed and acknowledged appropriately. Research is now showing that more women die annually from non-communicable diseases than from any other cause. In 2017, an estimated 18.1 million women died as a result of it, of which 8.6 million were due to cardiovascular disease, 4.8 million to cancer, and 1.8 million to respiratory disease. Rural health is a significant issue across the globe. With most countries' resources concentrated in major cities. Rural women around the world are more vulnerable to poor health outcomes compared to urban women. Many of the constraints are in regards to accessibility, affordability, and quality of care. The risk factors for developing a non-communicable disease are influenced by socioeconomic factors, with vulnerable groups affected the most. Therefore, prevention and management of non-communicable disease in rural population is lacking and affects low-income countries more so than high-income countries.
In 2000, we saw the introduction of the Millennium Development Goals with subsequent follow-up action leading to the number of maternal deaths dropping by 44% from 1990 to 2015. Women's sexual and reproductive health efforts are not complete and remain a matter of importance. It should be noted that efforts targeted towards reducing non-communicable disease have begun. In 2013, we saw the World Health Assembly put in place a set of 9 voluntary targets aimed at combating global mortality from the 4 main non-communicable diseases. Sustainable Development Goal Target 3.4 is to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment and to promote mental health and well-being. Primary care and prevention for rural women in low and middle income countries should be a priority to reduce the rate of mortality from non-communicable diseases. Telehealth is an ever-developing, useful avenue to increase the access and provision of effective healthcare in a rural setting. However, to complicate this issue further, research is demonstrating the detrimental effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, deaths from some communicable diseases have risen and persons with existing non-communicable diseases are at risk of severe illness and death due to COVID-19. The pandemic has disrupted many communicable disease and non-communicable disease services, which is expected to lead to increases in deaths. COVID-19 and insufficient global action could lead to Target 3.4 not being met. In summary, progress in maternal care has improved immensely since 2000. However, non-communicable disease prevention and care needs to become a priority. Rural and disadvantaged women are disproportionately represented in non-communicable deaths, and therefore action needs to be taken to improve healthcare delivery for these populations.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Priyanka Pinto and this is Sharon Yap. We're medical students from the University of Notre Dame, and today we're going to be presenting about the growth of telehealth in Australia. So a brief overview of telehealth. As many of you know, telehealth allows you to consult a healthcare provider on an audio or video call. It was expanded in March of 2020 to ensure the safety of patients and healthcare providers during the COVID-19 pandemic. And now many of these services have been retained permanently. Telehealth involves consulting your healthcare provider remotely when they have determined a physical examination isn't needed and you aren't able to see them in person. Telehealth services can include a diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. So telehealth consultations are not only convenient, they also ensure the safety of others by reducing the spread of illness. And this was very relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic when we were required to self-isolate or quarantine. And you can also, on telehealth, consult a medical specialist, allied health professional, nurse, midwife, or nurse practitioner via telehealth instead of face-to-face if appropriate. Between March 2020 and March 2022, over 100 million telehealth services were delivered to around 17 million Australians across the country. More than 92,000 medical practitioners have now used telehealth services to support their patients. And of these services, to break it down, GPs have provided almost 83 million, specialists almost 11 million, and allied health professionals around 5 million services. Yep, so although telehealth has been around for a long time in Australia, the uptake has been limited and is mostly used in the rural and remote communities. COVID-19 and recent changes to Medicare items for telehealth have boosted its use in recent years. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Digital Health Cooperative Research Center, DHCRC, responded quickly to support the health community and they developed the Telehealth Hub, which collects resources to help patients, clinicians, and policymakers, and to support the delivery of high quality, safe, and compassionate healthcare. They also launched a series of telehealth webinars featuring leading experts and practitioners who shared their knowledge with thousands of attendees. So this is what the Telehealth Hub looks like, and that's the link. They provide resources on technology for patients, clinicians, as well as COVID-19 resources as well. So to conclude, telehealth has grown significantly in Australia since the start of COVID-19 pandemic, and it has played a crucial role in improving health outcome of Australians by improving their access to healthcare services, especially during the pandemic lockdown. Telehealth is expected to continue as an ongoing and permanent feature of the Australian healthcare system. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to our talk on technology supporting public health. My name is Tessa Hunt.
And I'm Constance Maliaris. The World Health Organization defines health technology as the application of organized knowledge and skills in the form of medicines, vaccines, medical devices, and procedures, alongside systems that are used to solve numerous health problems and improve the quality of life across the world.
Technologies are revolutionizing every stage of the patient care pathway. Diagnosis is more sensitive and occurring earlier than before with the use of biosensors and artificial intelligence. Manufacturing processes such as 3D printers are improving the quality and availability of therapeutic devices and pharmaceuticals. Robotics are facilitating the safe application of precise surgery and targeted drug delivery. Drones are being used as a solution to logistical barriers to deliver medical aid to isolated or dangerous geographical locations. Patient support and autonomy is evolving with networking technologies such as the Internet of Things, which enables data sharing and communication abilities. These innovations are making healthcare more accessible while also alleviating the strain on human resources and hospital capacities.
The importance of digital technology in healthcare was highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw sharing of epidemiological modeling and viral genomes facilitate the rapid development of vaccines, including the new mRNA method, pushing research beyond its previous limits. From a public health perspective, we saw the introduction of digital contact tracing and QR code scanning assist epidemiological advancement. We also saw the pandemic force the rapid development of telemedicine services, which, although imperfect, are now established and relied upon in rural health services within Australia.
Despite offering enormous promise and potential, the implementation of technology in healthcare is met with many challenges. These vary for different stakeholders, each of which is driven by different incentives. Some of these challenges include data security and protection, integrating with existing healthcare structures, cost, patient equity, differences in medical standards, and insufficient evidence. We are currently at a pivotal point, which provides us with a unique opportunity to act proactively rather than reactively in addressing inequalities for low and middle income countries.
Whose response to this is summarized in the Global Strategy on Digital Health, outlining technology as something that should be an integral part of health priorities and benefit people in a way that is ethical, safe, secure, reliable, equitable, and sustainable. The strategy follows 4 guiding principles. These emphasize the need to address inequity in healthcare by further exploration and innovation of global solutions and shared services. Thank you for listening.
Hi, we're Ella, Imogen, and Rihanna, and we're third-year medical students at the University of Notre Dame, Australia. We will be presenting on the topic of health professionals as advocates for change. Health advocacy is the process by which physicians responsibly use their expertise to promote human health and well-being through channels of social, political, economic, and educational change. As medical students, we have felt both the privilege and responsibility of our future roles in healthcare. Physicians have working roles that are inherently set up for advocacy as they work closely with communities, understanding their needs and disadvantages, and often speaking on their behalf in order to mobilise resources for positive change. With this in mind, effective advocacy can exist at the individual or community level, but is almost always an empowering, shared and dynamic process. Healthcare is multifaceted, and physicians must be equipped to address the many factors that can affect it. In this way, physicians who are effective advocates understand the nature of health inequity and in turn are able to help influence health policy. It has been shown that training students in advocacy helps them to foster reasoning skills and sensibly tackle the complex ethical issues that inevitably arise while providing healthcare. The current literature suggests that advocacy training is essential for the development of future physicians who will help all communities access the healthcare they deserve. Further to this, it has been shown that early exposure to advocacy increases the likelihood of physicians including it in their future practice.
Growing evidence indicates that a significant portion of doctors are not meeting the expected standards in terms of their responsibility as advocates. A 2022 Australian study found that whilst junior doctors are expected to act as advocates, many lacked the awareness of this role and most did not view advocacy as part of their professional responsibilities. The reasons for this are multifaceted. During medical education, there is often competing curricular demands, meaning that advocacy is not often prioritised. Following graduation, these issues are exacerbated by conflicts with the added clinical responsibilities and time constraints. Further, the limited exposure to experiential training in medical education creates a gap between the theoretical knowledge taught in a classroom and obtaining the practical skills required to effectively advocate. The limited research on the subject of advocacy in medical education means there is no gold standard for both the teaching and assessment of advocacy. It is imperative that we address these complex barriers in order to best empower our health professionals in their role as advocates.
At the moment, there is a disconnect between the theoretical goal of educating future physicians in advocacy and the reality of postgraduate training. So how do we change this? Five key themes emerged from a scoping review about advocacy training in postgraduate medical education. There has been a movement towards advocating with rather than for patients, communities, and populations. When designing medical curricula, community-identified issues should be prioritised, and collaboration with community groups is important for the success of advocacy efforts. Additionally, engaging students in the planning and implementation of advocacy projects allows them to gain skills and knowledge about this process. It also facilitates self-motivation, which is necessary for continuing involvement in advocacy after medical school. When implementing advocacy education in medicine, longitudinal curricula linked to learning objectives is less common, but is a promising option. Curricula should focus on hands-on, immersive experiences where students can acquire transferable skills and build confidence. Our university has given students the opportunity to participate in this event as an advocacy learning opportunity. We've used an experiential learning model which involves participation in a hands-on experience and subsequent reflection about what has been learned and the consolidation of this information. Students learn transferable skills, which they can apply to other contexts when participating in advocacy in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Oh, hold on, I'm not on. Here we are. Thank you for your presentations. And what can we do? It's important for NGOs and academic institutions to continue to educate, collaborate, and undertake effective, to educate and collaborate, which will then give us the chance to undertake effective advocacy to assist women and girls across the globe. On behalf of IHAN and the University of Notre Dame, I'd like to thank Fordham for inviting us to participate in your conference. And I'd like all my young speakers to please unmute and show us your faces, as I believe you're ready to take questions. So can someone see, are there any questions? I can't see any open questions in the typing. And does anyone have any, if someone could keep an eye on the questions for me, perhaps Erica, I think if you're still around, Could you look out for them? I've got a few that I'd like to ask. Steffi and Catherine, for many years, there's been a very large focus globally on maternal health. So we do a lot for maternal health. And I'm just wondering, is that also then going to have any impact on the burden of non-communicable diseases in women?
Well, yes, maternal health conditions are actually a very an early determinant of risk for acquiring a non-communicable disease. So the risk factors for those non-communicable diseases include hypertension, so high blood pressure, and hyperglycemia, so diabetes. And these can lead to serious complications during pregnancy, which can threaten the mother and the child. And it also increases the risk of the child then developing a non-communicable disease. Similarly, under or overnutrition, so obesity or starvation, can also significantly increase the child's risk of developing cardiovascular disease and diabetes later in life.
So consequently, women whose health is already at risk, so from maternal conditions or a communicable disease, are particularly vulnerable, and they really should be prioritised for detection, diagnosis, and treatment for non-communicable diseases. While maternal health is not the largest burden impacting women at present, efforts targeted towards them will still be useful in our preventative approach in reducing non-communicable diseases.
Thank you. I'll keep my eye out to see if any typed questions come in. Priyanka, you presented on the growth of telehealth in rural Australia, but I'm just wondering, in your experience, is telehealth likely to grow as fast in rural India?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really good one, and looking at the impact of COVID-19 in India, it's definitely grown. But the problem is in rural India, poverty is really quite bad, to the point that people in rural areas, especially in the slums, can't actually afford to have their own laptop. From my experience, people often do have a mobile phone, but not a very updated one. And so they have access to maybe a phone call consultation, but not a video call. And that definitely limits the scope of what can be done, with looking at, or like a physical exam on a video call. So it's quite tricky, but one recommendation that I have would be to try and organise some sort of laptop or computer for a community. So for one slum community, so that when they need to, they could go in and do their appointment that way. Another issue, though, is in these rural communities, there is a bit of a lack of awareness and education surrounding women's health. And a lot of women's health issues can be seen as very taboo, unfortunately. So that's something to bear in mind, that a lot of these women probably feel very embarrassed and uncomfortable to talk about things in general, and on the phone kind of makes it a little bit more uncomfortable too. But I think a lot of them would be very grateful for the opportunity to actually access healthcare in general. So it's definitely an improvement and a step up, and something we can work on. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm still not seeing any more questions. So Constance and Tessa, I'm just wondering, you've talked a bit about doctors supporting patients. What about allied health workers? How can they support patients accessing digital health technology?
Yeah, so I think that they've definitely got a role in teaching people how to engage and use technology at a more practical level. So that can be things like developing resources, continuing to build health literacy, and delivering support activities and workshops. It's really important that this is done with a understanding of particular initiatives and goals that are implemented by certain local governments. And relating those back to those digital health goals for those given countries, as those are different. However, for women specifically, there are still many challenges, and this is sort of everyone's responsibility to address. So for International Women's Day, I think they published that nearly 50% of all artificial intelligence systems in all industries have a gender bias, and that can be due to things like gender gaps in the professionals who are developing them. And then there's also the issue of women in low and middle income countries being nearly 20% less likely than men to have a smartphone. So that's also contributing to this gap of access and engagement with these technologies. And these are sort of more systemic issues that we need to think about as well as we move forward.
So can I just check, you all look so much younger than me, the downfalls of using digital technology, the main downfall I see is that women don't seem to have access, but are there any other downfalls?
Yes, I think that there are quite a few downfalls that we've very briefly touched on. But I think one of the main ones that we're kind of seeing now, at least in Australia, is just a lack of regulation and legal framework around privacy concerns. So protecting everyone's confidentiality, really. So last year in September in Australia, we had the Optus data hack, which released the personal information of millions of Australians, their date of birth, their names, Medicare cards, driver's licenses, passport numbers. And that was very, I guess, confronting to our systems that we have here. And I think that the carry-on effect of that is patients being less forthcoming with sharing their health info if they don't feel like it will be protected. So that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, as well as just maybe an over-reliance on technology moving forward may lead to less personalization within the medical system, and also an over-reliance being that you kind of need to incorporate not only what technology is telling you, but what you see in a clinical picture with your patient. So you don't just rely on that for the diagnosis, but you kind of maintain that personability.
Thank you very, very much. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. I think that to me, one of the main things about today is not necessarily the topics that are chosen, but it's understanding about advocacy. Mandy gave a very, very passionate and personal discussion about an enormous issue. The medical students are trying to identify issues for rural women. And at our university, we're like at the beginning of trying to work out how do you teach students advocacy. But at the Institute for Women and Girls, they've got a history for 20 years of teaching information about issues for women and girls and also actively doing advocacy. I think they're like the gold standard. They put their students into the UN and teach them hands-on advocacy. So I'd like to thank Fordham for allowing us to join you today, but also I want to thank you for leading the way. And I'm hoping that your youngsters and my youngsters will collaborate in the same wonderful way that Sandy, Elaine, Sarosh and I have done. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, let me just interject. Thank you. I mean, this has been a wonderful partnership for us, working with you. And I love meeting all your students and look forward to maybe next year seeing you in New York for CSW, both at Fordham and at the United Nations.
I'm very much hoping that will come to fruition, Elaine. It'd be beautiful to be doing this face to face. And thank you.
Right.
I just wanted to add my thanks too, Gabrielle. It's wonderful working with you and your students, and we hope we can keep this partnership up for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Chelsea. Well, Chelsea, you have a problem. Can't hear you.
To step Hi, everyone. I'm trying again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, fine. Thanks.
Amazing. Okay.
Always happens.
As you can tell, I have unstable Wi-Fi at the moment. So if I go mute again or I cut out, my cohort, Michael, has so graciously offered to introduce our next segment. But while I still have service, my name is Chelsea and I am an MSW candidate at Fordham University and a UN intern under the supervision of Dr. Congress. In addition to these roles, I have been a professional dancer for the past 14 years. And as a dancer based here in New York City, I have had the privilege of working with some incredible dance companies, one of which is Alvin Ailey. I have assisted my dance partner, Adam Barrick, teach and set work on the Ailey Fordham BFA students, as well as set a piece on Ailey 2, the second company. Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater was developed from a now infamous performance in 1958 at the 92nd Street Y, right here in New York City, in which Alvin Ailey himself led a group of young African-American modern dancers. And this dance performance basically changed the whole perception of American modern dance. So much so that that in 2008, a US congressional resolution designated the company as a vital American cultural ambassador to the world, one that celebrates the uniqueness of the African-American cultural experience and the preservation and enrichment of the American modern dance heritage. So tonight we will see a clip from Alvin Ailey's famous work, Revelations. Revelations uses African-American spirituals, song sermons, gospel songs, and holy blues, and really kind of explores the places of deepest grief and holiest joy in your soul, and it has become a true cultural treasure. So with that, we will see the first 3 minutes of an opening performance that the Ailey Company performed at Lincoln Center. So enjoy.
Trouble all over
Okay, well, that, I love Alvin Ailey. Used to see him year after year after year. That was a wonderful clip, Chelsea. Thank you so much for sharing it. And okay, well, this actually concludes our presentations for this evening. And I see I'm going to be Matthew and Michael and I are going to be up. I know I can't seem to turn my camera on for some reason. I can't, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't turn, you just have to have my voice. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that concludes the presentations for this evening. Are there any, does anybody have any thoughts or questions that they'd like to add at this point? We'd be happy to take questions. Any more questions, you can put them in the Q&A.
So I don't have any questions from the chat that I'm getting in, but I have a question for a bunch of the speakers. If anybody wants to take a couple of these, maybe I'll preface it by a little thought that I had. So hi everybody, I'm Michael. I'm also an MSW candidate. You can't see me because some reason, I don't know, my video is not working, but okay. So my little preface is that this could be another echo chamber, right? Like the presentations we're seeing make us aware of so many people in multilateral fields across society, including doctors and educators and entertainers and actors, as Mandy mentioned, and performers and dancers, as Chelsea just mentioned. And yet we all have the potential for advocacy. It's a big hallmark of the Institute, among other organizations, for the past 20 years. And it seems that activism and advocacy are these big hot topic words, this kind of zeitgeist in our culture now. So I'm wondering, from some of the presenters that presented tonight, where you see some of this larger trend moving? I see that this has kind of been a big trend in media and in so many of these fields, but where do we go from here? And maybe to clarify it, what are the small little baby steps that people from this conference can take away as, oh, and this is the thing I can do? So what are some baby steps, I guess, in light of all of that we can take? And any presenter could answer this.
Okay, teacher Megan. I think I have a response. I mean, about how we're all in this together. We all contribute in our own way. You know, be it through social work, you know, which is my field, but also through other things, through medical fields. That's Gabriella, you know, and her students, but through art, and I think this is really illustrated by what Chelsea showed in terms of dance. I mean, we're all advocates, but we do it in so many different ways. But maybe there's a lot of strength about it. It's all coming together. And remember about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal. What is number 17? In some ways, I think number 17 is the most important. And that's really on promoting and fostering partnerships. And this is what this is. I mean, we're kind of partnering to make the world better, to deal with terrible oppression of human rights. And Mandy made us extra aware of what's happening with women's rights, you know, in our world. But also just about how we can all come together in all these different fields. And if we all work together, maybe we'll be able to address some of these serious issues that are affecting women's welfare and people's welfare around the world. So I guess I just want to make a kind of a shout out for the value of partnerships, and partnership really will help us all work better and more effectively as advocates.
Mandy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but have any suggestions about how we could, you know, what baby step think about beginning to take in terms of really the women and the revolution in Iran?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I feel like in the past, people always talk about virtue signaling as a deterrent, you know, and in a lot of movements, people are like, I don't want to virtue signal. I don't want to put up this, you know, whether it's a black square or whether it's this infographic. And we really are worried about appropriating and all of that. And I do think that is something that has been birthed out of, I think it's become a crutch. And I think that the way to overcome that hurdle is truly to ask questions, to attend events like this today, to become knowledgeable, and to find people whose voices you trust and to amplify their voices. So and then find a way to advocate. So even just asking the question of, is there a way that we can help, I think is something that we should begin asking everybody. You know, like right now, I know there's a lot of things I don't know about how I can support my, you know, the LGBTQIA plus community. I don't want Jon Stewart to be the only one who's speaking up against certain things. I also want to join the conversation. And so it's important for me to ask and then also amplify, because it's not everyone, you know, this stuff is taxing. Activism is taxing. It takes a lot out of you. I can't tell you how many times since September I have just been exhausted, and you know, maybe I'm on my phone till 5:30 in the morning, but it's because I'm consuming content. So it's not always easy for me to then help somebody else get educated, even though I want to be doing that. So I think it's really important to find the advocates, the people, the thought leaders in the space, and amplify their content, and also just learn from them so that you can be a voice in your own dynamic way.
Thank you. That's great. Anyone else have, because I love Michael's question.
Gabrielle has her.
Yeah,
her
you
hand
got
up.
an answer. Good.
I've got a few different levels, Michael, and it's a really good question. The first one is the Commission on the Status of Women that's occurring right now. In the pre-COVID, 10,000 people used to come in and land on the UN, and you had governments and NGOs all working together with the UN on particular themes, where information was shared from the NGOs, taken through the governments, and resolutions were brought through. So that's a very large scale item. On a smaller scale, in Australia, I found there are a whole stack of women's groups that were working as little individual organisations, going to government, pleading for something, and the government will go snap, run away, and no one even knew. So I founded the Australian Women's Coalition. I took 19 national women's organisations, Jewish women, Muslim women, Catholic women, Zontas, Seroptimists, women doctors, Salvation Army, Girls Guides. I took 19 organizations and it represented several million women. And then when the Bosnian women said, we've got an issue, I would then go with them and we'd send a letter ahead saying, the Bosnian women have an issue. We're here to see you today, Minister. Do you mind at the end of this meeting if I write back to my 19 presidents or write back to my 3 million members and tell them what you're going to do about the Bosnian women's issue? So certainly collaborating with a lot of people from different faiths, religions, ages, walks of life. And so I think that collaboration is important. But then also there's a whole stack of different ways of doing advocacy. Now, all of you will have heard of female genital mutilation. Most people around the globe have heard of it. But are you aware that the torture of widows causes far more morbidity and mortality and occurs in far greater frequency than female genital mutilation? So, for example, in the eastern states of Nigeria, I surveyed 1,000 Nigerian widows, and it was things like after your husband dies, you do not have the right to own any possessions for your children, and you will become the property of your husband's nearest relative. But there are also types of torture. They shave your head off, they scar your face. You may be repeatedly raped for 48 hours to get rid of the evil spirits. There are horrific torture that goes on for these women for several years because they are widows. And we've taken to the UN, we've done everything. Right now, there are several widows meetings going on. Nothing much was happening. And Eleanor from Nigeria and I started working together. And we did things like the UN wrote to her town in Enugu and wrote to the governor. Nothing happened. He said it's a human rights violation. Nothing happened. She presented in the House of Commons. England, our Prime Minister wrote to Enugu. Nothing happened. But 86 women doctors from 86 countries to write to the governor just in her little town. I just wanted to pick one town. Nothing happened. And then Eleanor and I went to the governor of New South Wales, which is like very, very minor type person. And we told her how Eleanor keeps trying to see this man in one of her towns, saying we need to rule it out. He refuses to see her. And one of the Kenyan ladies taught me a lovely trick. So my governor for New South Wales wrote a letter to the governor of Enugu and said how she's in awe of him and how wonderful he is for agreeing to meet with Eleanor and discuss the torture of Nigerian widows in his town, and that he's considering outlawing it. And she thanks him and just wrote a whole beautiful praising letter. So Eleanor, when she went back to Enugu, the day she gave that letter into the office of her governor, her husband put on the front page of the newspaper. And that governor, within a few more months, outlawed the torture of widows in his town. So, Michael, you're quite right. Who knows what works with advocacy? Advocacy is an unbelievable beast. Doing it alone, I think, is very difficult. Doing it across multidisciplinary areas with people from different jobs, backgrounds, cultures, I think that's our best way of doing it. It's like from Mandy's point of view, you just got to keep hacking and hacking and hacking away. Eleanor and I have been doing this now for nearly 30 years. We've only got a couple of towns where it's outlawed, but it's still worth the fight. And I think it's all in the younger generation. I honestly believe that these young people coming up today, they're going to come up with completely different ways of doing advocacy. I think they're going to be more effective than our old way. And I think it's a space really worth watching and being part of.
I want Gabrielle, I think Nance said you're with a Christian. It really rang to me, and I think there's great hope in the younger. Does anybody else have? We're coming to the our conference, but does any they want to ask, or any of the speakers have any further statement they'd like to make?
Kind of broke up. Maybe I'll reiterate the question. Is there other any other little comments or questions that people have for speakers that aren't present on screen right now? I don't know. I don't think so. I guess I have one more.
Everyone would be happy to turn their video on, and would you be happy for us to get a screenshot of a
That's a great
photo of all
idea.
the people who are present today. Could everyone put your video on?
If you can't or don't want to, that's okay too.
And then the clever AV people at Fordham, I'll count 1, 2, 3, take our photo.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Well,
Got it. Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
okay, thanks. Well, and we also will put this in Fordham News. Connor White is the person from Connor. Come make yourself visible. Connor is the person from Fordham who helps with promotion, and he's our communications director. So he will bring this to light on Fordham News. And this is hi Connor. It's also been recorded, so we also will, we'll share this because I know you'll have people say, "Oh, I really wanted to go, but there's something came up." So we'll have the recording that we can share with others.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and everybody for staying. Most people who signed on, and I think that's really fantastic, and I'm really thrilled about that. I also just wanted to say few more words about the Institute for Women and Girls. And we were 20 years ago members, and we've been strong ever since. And we put on at least 2 conferences a year, sometimes even 3. And this year, under the sort of the spearheading of Pat Brownell, who's a professor emeritus from Fordham and one of the president of the Institute for Women and Girls, and Michael Buckout, really put together this amazing newsletter we used to have years and years ago, and they brought it back, only they brought it back in a much more creative and exciting and really interesting way, with articles by Chelsea Nosky and Erica Udau and some other faculty members. So we want to encourage you all to try to take a look at the newsletter, stay in touch with the Institute for Women and Girls, stay in touch with us. We're always something, more and more students involved a year, which we're really thrilled about. I have to say this program was really, really, really initiated and spearheaded by our students who are interns at the UN. So thank you all, and we hope to see you again.
And also students from Australia, you're welcome to join us. I mean, could we do this like online, so please join us. We'd love to. This is like forming a partnership, medicine and social work, so please. And I also am a psychologist, so this is for all our helping professions. So. And also with dance, it's really important. I mean, and Chelsea really illustrates it. We often are very multidisciplinary, and Chelsea's also being a dancer. I should also, and I'm sorry, I think that Susan had to go, but she also is a very accomplished cello player and plays with the UN orchestra. So she's multi-talented, as many people are. And that's another way to advocate too. You go into many different areas, and you can bring kind of advocacy into all these different areas.
Okay, thank you all so much for your presentations and your attendance, and hope to see you very soon.
Right. Yeah, thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, you want to be in touch with any of our speakers, please, email me. My email is very simple, Congress, and I'm sure we can spell that, at fordham.edu. If you want to connect about anything else, about Fordham, social work, but most importantly about the Women's Institute and some of our, work in that area.
Bye. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night. Thanks for coming.